Welcome back to Doctors Teach, the podcast where we say the things most people are thinking but won't say out loud in a faculty meeting. Yeah, that's me. I'm that person. Today's topic, the stigma around remediation and how to fix it. Because let's be honest, remediation has become the Voldemort of residency education. The thing we don't speak of, the scarlet R. But here's the thing, struggling is normal and addressing it shouldn't be shameful. So in this episode, let's talk about how to create a program culture where remediation isn't taboo. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk about why remediation feels taboo in the first place. The stigma around remediation comes from a few places. So residents think it's career ending, faculty don't want to be the bad guy, and then there's a general vibe that remediation equals someone messed up. So I get it. It's seen as failure. It's maybe through a lack of transparency, and then faculty fear really labeling residents. So instead of having conversations about growth, we whisper in the hallways and we avoid direct feedback and hope things will magically just get better. And spoiler alert, they don't. They never do. So let's reframe remediation. It's not a punishment. It feels like a punishment, but truly it isn't a punishment. That's not what it's meant to be. It's really meant to be a teaching tool, a structured, supported plan to help someone grow. Every single resident has gaps, whether they're in a plan or not. And what makes remediation different is just that we've identified the gap, we've acknowledged it, and we've built a path forward. So that's not failure. That, my friend, is education. So think of it as a learning tool, not a punishment. Every resident has gaps, and support does not equal failure. So we've got to change our mindset just around remediation in general. But as always, let's take a look at a case example of silence equals stigma. So let's walk through this case that I've seen way too often. A resident receives feedback about communication issues. Faculty talk about it amongst themselves, but they don't document anything or involve the CCC. Why? Because they don't want to label the resident or they don't want to make it formal. So nothing happens until the resident makes a mistake that can't be ignored. We've all seen it. So now what? Now what do we do? So the remediation plan kind of feels like a slap in the face because it comes out of absolutely nowhere. The resident has no idea it's coming. I often hear them say things like, oh, no one has ever said this to me. I've never had anyone point this out. So silence actually feeds the stigma. Clarity prevents it. So let's talk about this a little further. Strategy number 1, normalize these growth plans. Yes, that's right. Let's normalize remediation. Yeah, it's still going to be a dirty word. I would say that we're not going to set out to change that by any means. But I think we need to acknowledge that everyone hits bumps and growth plans don't equal punishment. So, that early support, the earlier we can talk to residents about what we're observing, that prevents escalation of problems. And what we need to do is we've got to normalize the idea that needing support is part of the process. You can say things like, we've noticed some areas for growth. Let's put a plan in place early so we can address it now. And that's something that comes well before remediation. And I'm a huge fan of this approach. It's just in the moment telling the resident, hey, this is what I've observed. How about let's just put a plan in place right now, really early, so we can address this issue now. And then later, that doesn't set you up for a remediation plan if we're just dealing with it right now. And this really sets the tone. It says to the resident, hey, you're not in trouble. You're in progress. You are a work in progress. And that's something that the type of language that I absolutely support in any resident education. All right, strategy number 2. This is a big one. Training faculty to speak the same language. So just letting them know through faculty development, hey, remediation isn't a dirty word. And then you teach phrasing that's supportive, right? So faculty sometimes mean well, but they're not always trained in how to talk about this. You've heard the vague phrases like, they're not quite there, or hey, I'm concerned, but I don't want to ruin their career. And what we really need to be doing is training faculty to say, this resident is not yet meeting expectations for this competency, and here's the data that shows it. So this is a statement that shows clear communication on the problem at hand. It's supportive, and it's no drama, right? It's something that I think is very objective. If they're able to show the data behind the deficiency and be able to tell the resident, like, hey, this is what I've observed, and this is what I think you need to work on. And that's something that it's progress. All right, moving on to strategy number 3. Make remediation visible in your systems. Don't bury it. Integrate it into all your CCC workflows or your faculty meetings where you frequently talk about resident progress. Talk about it in your faculty development sessions. I think the more you can have faculty development tailored to remediation and being able to provide feedback, both positive and negative, it just sets up your entire residency program for success from your residents all the way to your faculty. So if your CCC treats remediation like a secret side project, it's going to stay taboo. So instead, make it a part of your meeting agenda. Include remediation discussions in your retreats, in your faculty development sessions, and share success stories so that faculty see it as effective and not punitive. There are times in a lot of our meetings where I share a quick success story that may have happened years ago. I take out names to protect the innocent, but I like talking about those instances where we've pointed out a specific issue and given residents kind of a clear roadmap to help support their progress. And then when they have their successes, I think it really does demonstrate to faculty that, hey, okay, this is good. Residents don't like us to sugarcoat this information, and transparency really is the key. So put it on the map and don't sweep it under the rug. Let's start talking about remediation and resident performance in everything we do. All right, strategy number 4, redefining success. So what I mean by that is we celebrate match day, we celebrate graduation, we celebrate board scores, but why don't we celebrate successful remediation? If a resident works really hard and builds the skills, meets the goals of their plan, and then what? Nothing. All right, we got to change that. Let's, start looking at it from this viewpoint of, hey, this is something to really celebrate. Let your program know, hey, this resident did the work. This is what real growth looks like. So successful remediation equals improved performance. Growth is really the thing that we're shooting for, not perfection. So let's celebrate all those little wins along the way. All right, so my recap on building a culture of support. Really, here's your blueprint for building that culture where remediation isn't taboo. Normalize remediation as a teaching tool. Train your team to speak the language of support. Make remediation visible and not hidden. No more sweeping it under the rug. And redefine success and celebrate the wins. This isn't soft. This is a structure, and programs that embrace it, they don't just survive, they thrive. That sounded a little cliche, but it's true. And then remediation isn't something that is shameful. I like to tell our faculty that culture change starts with them. So if we want to see something different, then they're the ones that have to model it from the get-go. So if they're talking about remediation and not sugarcoating feedback and really telling residents, hey, this is what I've observed, this is how you can improve. Let's nip this now and really start focusing on this so it doesn't become a huge problem later. Let's take care of it in the moment. All right, so we've talked about a lot of stuff. Remediation is not a dirty word. It's not a sentence. It's a strategy. And the way we talk about it as faculty, as CCCs, as programs, it really sets the tone for everything that follows. All right, next time on Doctors Teach, we're going to talk about what happens at the end of remediation. Yep, we're going there too. And if I might ask, if this episode gave you one new way to think about remediation, leave a quick review, or better yet, forward it to someone in your program who's still whispering about that resident. Let's get this conversation out of the shadows and into the open. As always, thank you for supporting my podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube and want help building a more supportive and structured remediation process, download the free introductory lesson of the Elevate Remediation Fast Track course, or take the free remediation risk assessment at www.docmaclearning.com. Links are in the description, and grab what you need, and I'll see you in the next episode.